The harsh fluorescent lights of the corporate boardroom cast an unforgiving glow as Sarah Mitchell sat across from her boss, Mr. Davidson, watching his lips curl into that familiar, condescending smile she'd grown to despise over the past 3 years. The 42-year-old marketing executive had built her entire career on dedication, working 60-hour weeks, sacrificing family dinners and weekend plans, all in the belief that loyalty and hard work would eventually be rewarded. She'd climbed from an entry-level position to senior marketing director at Pinnacle Solutions, bringing in millions in revenue and earning the respect of clients who specifically requested her expertise. Yet here she sat, listening to words that would shatter everything she believed about corporate fairness and human decency. Hello, my dear friends. I'm Tina, and I'm here with you once again to share a story that will touch your heart and perhaps remind you that sometimes life has the most incredible ways of balancing the scales. Today, I want to tell you about Sarah Mitchell, a brilliant woman whose world was turned upside down by 3 devastating words from her boss, but whose journey didn't end there. In fact, what happened next is so extraordinary that it proves that sometimes our greatest setbacks become the foundation for our most incredible victories. Stay with me until the very end, because the twist in this story will leave you amazed and inspired. If you're ready for a tale of resilience, justice, and the power of believing in yourself, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to join our community of people who believe that every ending can be a new beginning. Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you, Davidson said, leaning back in his leather chair with the casual cruelty of someone who'd delivered similar news countless times before. You're replaceable. Every single person in this company is replaceable, including you. The sooner you understand that, the better. Off you'll be. The words hung in the air like poison, each syllable designed to diminish her worth and remind her of what he perceived as her proper place in his corporate hierarchy. Sarah felt her heart sink as she processed the casual brutality of his statement delivered during what she'd thought would be a routine performance review. She'd come into this meeting expecting recognition for the Henderson account she'd just closed, a deal worth $2.5 million that had taken 6 months of careful cultivation and strategic planning. Davidson continued his monologue with the detached efficiency of someone who'd clearly rehearsed similar speeches before. Your numbers are adequate, Sarah, but adequate isn't exceptional. We need exceptional. We need people who understand that this company doesn't owe anyone anything, and that includes job security, recognition, or special treatment. He shuffled through papers on his desk with theatrical indifference, not even bothering to make eye contact as he systematically demolished her professional confidence. I've been watching your performance over the past quarter, and while you're competent doesn't justify the salary we're paying you. Frankly, I could hire 2 fresh graduates for what we're spending on you, and they'd probably bring more energy and innovation to the role. The devastating irony wasn't lost on Sarah that she was being lectured about replaceability by a man who spent most of his days playing golf with clients while she handled the actual relationship management and strategic planning that kept those accounts profitable. Davidson had inherited his position through nepotism, being the nephew of one of the founding partners, while Sarah had earned every promotion through measurable results and client satisfaction scores that consistently ranked in the top 5% company-wide. She'd mentored dozens of junior employees, implemented systems that increased departmental efficiency by 30%, and had been personally requested by name on 7 major accounts over the past 18 months. Yet here she sat, being told she was dispensable by someone whose primary qualification seemed to be his family connections and his ability to blame others when things went wrong. Furthermore, Davidson continued, clearly enjoying the power dynamic he'd established, I need you to understand that questioning my decisions or suggesting alternative strategies isn't welcomed in this department. Your job is to execute my vision, not to think you know better than someone who's been in this industry longer than you've been alive. The statement was particularly galling because Sarah knew she had 12 years more industry experience than Davidson, who jumped between family-connected positions without ever spending more than 18 months actually working in any operational capacity. She'd won 3 industry awards, including the prestigious Innovation in Client Relations. Recognition just 8 months earlier, while Davidson's greatest professional achievement seemed to be remembering to show up to meetings he hadn't scheduled himself. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside her as she realized this wasn't just about work performance or corporate restructuring. This was about a man who felt threatened by her competence and was using his positional authority to diminish someone he perceived as a challenge to his comfortable, unearned status. She thought about all the times she'd covered for his mistakes, the presentations she'd salvaged when he'd forgotten crucial client details, the relationships she'd repaired when his arrogance had offended important partners. She remembered the late nights and weekend calls, the family events she'd missed, the personal sacrifices she'd made in service of a company that apparently viewed her as nothing more than an interchangeable cog in their corporate machine. "I see," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying a calm that surprised even her. "You know what, Mr. Davidson? You're absolutely right about one thing. People are replaceable, and sometimes the most replaceable person in the room is the one who thinks they're indispensable." She stood up slowly, gathering her portfolio and the Henderson contract documentation she'd brought for what she'd expected would be a celebration of another successful deal. "I quit, effective immediately." The words came out with crystalline clarity, each one carrying the weight of 3 years of accumulated frustration and the sudden, liberating realization that she didn't have to accept being diminished by someone half as qualified as she was. Davidson's face shifted from smug satisfaction to genuine surprise, then quickly to concern as the implications of Sarah's resignation began to register. "Sarah, let's not be hasty here. I was simply providing feedback to help you grow professionally. There's no need to—" But Sarah was already moving toward the door, her mind racing with possibilities that hadn't existed just moments before. For the first time in 3 years, she felt genuinely excited about her professional future, liberated from the suffocating atmosphere of a workplace where competence was treated as a threat rather than an asset. "Actually, Mr. Davidson, there is every need," Sarah replied, turning back to face him one final time. "I've spent 3 years watching you take credit for work you didn't do, blaming others for mistakes you made, and treating talented people like they should be grateful just to work in your presence. You want to know what's replaceable? This entire toxic environment you've created." She paused at the doorway, feeling a surge of confidence that had been buried under years of corporate compliance and the misguided belief that keeping her head down would eventually lead to recognition and advancement. Within 15 minutes of walking out of Pinnacle Solutions, Sarah was sitting in her car making the most important phone call of her professional life. Marcus Chen had been trying to recruit her for almost 2 years, ever since they'd worked together on a joint venture between their respective companies. Marcus had started his own consulting firm, Evolution Strategies, and had consistently told Sarah that whenever she was ready to work for someone who actually valued talent and innovation, he had a place for her. She'd always politely declined, believing that loyalty to Pinnacle would eventually be rewarded. But now she realized that loyalty was a two-way street that Davidson had never bothered to travel. "Sarah, I was just thinking about you," Marcus said when he answered the phone, his voice carrying the warm enthusiasm that had always made their professional interactions feel more like collaborations between equals rather than hierarchical exchanges. "Please tell me you're finally ready to come work with people who appreciate what you bring to the table." When Sarah explained what had just transpired, Marcus was quiet for a long moment before responding with barely contained excitement. "Sarah, I've been waiting for this call for 2 years. I've got 3 major clients who have specifically asked if you'd ever consider freelance work, and I've got a partnership proposal that's going to blow your mind. Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" That evening, Sarah called her husband David with news that she'd expected would cause concern, but instead was met with relief and celebration. "Honey, I've been watching you come home stressed and underappreciated for years," David said, his voice filled with pride. "You've been carrying that place on your shoulders while they treated you like you were lucky to be there. Maybe this is exactly what needed to happen." Their teenage daughter Emma was even more direct in her response. "Mom, you've been way too good for that place since forever. Maybe now you can work somewhere that actually deserves you. The meeting with Marcus the next morning exceeded every expectation Sarah had dared to form. Evolution Strategies wasn't just looking for another employee. They wanted a full partner. Marcus had been building toward this expansion for 18 months, but he'd been waiting for the right person to help him take the company to the next level. "Sarah, I don't want to hire you," Marcus explained over coffee, spreading out business plans and financial projections that made her head spin with possibilities. "I want to make you a co-founder. I've got the client relationships and the business development side covered, but I need someone with your operational expertise and account management skills to help me build something really special." The partnership proposal was unlike anything Sarah had ever encountered in her corporate career. Equal ownership, shared decision-making, and a compensation structure directly tied to company growth rather than arbitrary performance reviews. Conducted by insecure managers. Marcus had identified a gap in the market for high-level strategic consulting combined with hands-on implementation support, exactly the type of hybrid approach that Sarah had been advocating for at Pinnacle before Davidson had dismissed her ideas as overreach beyond her assigned responsibilities. But the most intriguing part of Marcus's proposal wasn't the business structure or financial projections. It was his strategy for building their team. "Sarah, I've been watching what's happening at Pinnacle, and you're not the only talented person being undervalued there. I think we could offer some of your former colleagues opportunities they're never going to get in that environment." Marcus had clearly done his research because he started naming specific people from Sarah's former department, people whose skills and frustrations she knew intimately. "What if we could build our dream team by recruiting people who are tired of working for managers who see talent as a threat rather than an asset?" My wonderful viewers, I can see in the comments that many of you are sharing your own experiences with difficult bosses and workplace challenges. Your stories touch my heart, and I want you to know that you're not alone in these struggles. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt undervalued or taken for granted at work, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're building a community here of people who believe that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, whether at work or in any area of life. Share in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you deserved better treatment? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content I create for all of us. The plan that Sarah and Marcus developed over the following week was audacious in its scope and elegant in its simplicity. They would systematically approach the most talented individuals at Pinnacle. Solutions, offering them not just better compensation and working conditions, but the opportunity to be part of building something meaningful from the ground up. Their first target was Jennifer Torres, a brilliant data analyst whose insights had been instrumental in securing the Henderson account, but who had never received credit or recognition for her contributions. Jennifer had been with Pinnacle for 4 years, consistently producing work that exceeded expectations while being passed over for promotions in favor of less qualified candidates who had better relationships with Davidson. When Sarah called Jennifer that Thursday evening, she could hear the exhaustion in her former colleague's voice. "Sarah, I heard what happened with Davidson. Honestly, I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry you had to go through that." Jennifer explained that the work environment had become even more toxic since Sarah's departure, with Davidson increasingly paranoid about employee loyalty and implementing new policies that felt more like surveillance than management. He actually had HR distribute a memo about maintaining appropriate boundaries in professional communications and warned everyone about the dangers of outside influences undermining company loyalty. "I think he's genuinely worried that other people might follow your example." The conversation with Jennifer revealed just how pervasive the problems at Pinnacle had become. Davidson had apparently spent the days following Sarah's resignation in damage control mode, trying to reassure clients while simultaneously bad-mouthing Sarah to anyone who would listen. "He told the Henderson people that you left because you couldn't handle the pressure of working with serious clients," Jennifer reported with obvious disgust. "But here's the thing, Sarah. Mr. Henderson called me directly yesterday asking for your contact information because he wants to follow you wherever you landed. He said working with you was the best client experience he's had in 20 years of business." Marcus's approach to recruitment was masterful in its psychological understanding of what motivated talented professionals who had been systematically undervalued. Rather than simply offering better salaries, he presented each potential recruit with a comprehensive vision of what their professional growth could look like in an environment designed to nurture excellence rather than suppress it. When he met with Jennifer, he brought detailed examples of how her analytical skills could be expanded into strategic consultation roles, complete with educational support for additional certifications and a clear path toward eventual partnership in the firm. The response from Pinnacle's talent was overwhelming. Within 2 weeks, Sarah and Marcus had secured commitments from 5 key employees who collectively represented decades of experience and millions of dollars in client relationships. Tom Bradley, the creative director who had designed award-winning campaigns only to watch Davidson take credit in client presentations, jumped at the chance to have his work properly attributed and his creative vision supported with adequate budgets. Lisa Wang, the account coordinator who had been maintaining client relationships despite Davidson's tendency to alienate people with his arrogance, was excited about the prospect of being promoted to account manager with full authority to make decisions in her client's best interests. But the most significant recruitment was David Kim, Pinnacle's operations manager who had been keeping the company functional despite Davidson's chaotic leadership style. David had been with Pinnacle for 7 years, having built most of their internal systems and processes from scratch. Yet he'd never been given appropriate recognition or compensation for essentially running the day-to-day operations of the entire company. When Marcus offered him the position of Chief Operating Officer at Evolution Strategies, with equity stake and full authority over operational decisions, David didn't even ask for time to consider the offer. The mass resignation was coordinated for maximum impact. On a Monday morning in late October, 5 key employees submitted their resignations simultaneously, each citing similar concerns about leadership, professional growth opportunities, and company culture. Davidson's assistant later reported that she could hear him shouting phone calls throughout the morning, first trying to convince people to reconsider, then attempting to contact clients to reassure them about service continuity, and finally making increasingly desperate calls to headhunters and recruitment firms to find immediate replacements. The client exodus began within 48 hours. The Henderson Group was the first to formally notify Pinnacle that they would be terminating their contract and following Sarah to Evolution Strategies. Their decision created a domino effect, as other clients who had specifically worked with Sarah or the departed team members began questioning whether Pinnacle could maintain the level of service they'd become accustomed to. Marcus had anticipated this response and had spent weeks preparing comprehensive transition plans to ensure that every client relationship could be seamlessly transferred without any disruption in service or project timelines. By the end of the first week, Evolution Strategies had gained 7 major clients with combined annual billings of over $4 million, while Pinnacle had lost not only those accounts, but was struggling to service their remaining clients with a skeletal staff and no clear succession plan for the institutional knowledge that had walked out the door. Davidson found himself in the unprecedented position of having to personally manage accounts he'd never fully understood, while trying to train replacement staff who lacked the experience and relationships necessary to maintain client satisfaction. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that Davidson's casual cruelty about replaceability had created exactly the scenario he'd claimed was impossible. The departure of supposedly replaceable employees had revealed just how irreplaceable their contributions actually were. The man who had built his management philosophy on the premise that no individual was essential to company success was now discovering that his success had been entirely dependent on the very people he'd treated as expendable resources rather than valuable contributors to organizational growth and client satisfaction. The transformation of Evolution Strategies from ambitious startup to industry disruptor happened with breathtaking speed. Within 30 days of the mass exodus from Pinnacle, Sarah and Marcus had secured office space in a converted warehouse that perfectly embodied their philosophy of creative collaboration and innovative thinking. The open concept design featured collaborative workspaces, state-of-the-art technology, and amenities that demonstrated their commitment to employee well-being, everything from an on-site fitness center to flexible work-from-home policies that respected their team's need for work-life balance. The moment Sarah walked through those glass doors for the first time, she felt a profound sense of relief wash over her shoulders. "This is what a workplace should feel like," she whispered to Marcus, her voice thick with emotion as she surveyed the bright, welcoming space that stood in stark contrast to Pinnacle's sterile corporate environment. The afternoon sunlight streamed through massive skylights, casting warm golden rays across polished concrete floors that seemed to symbolize the solid foundation they were building together. The cultural difference between Evolution Strategies and Pinnacle became immediately apparent in their first all-hands meeting. Instead of top-down directives and fear-based management, Sarah and Marcus facilitated open discussions about company vision, individual career goals, and collaborative decision-making processes. Jennifer Torres found herself contributing strategic insights that had been dismissed at Pinnacle, while Tom Bradley was given creative freedom and budget authority he'd never experienced in his previous role. The energy in the room was electric as talented professionals finally felt empowered to contribute their best work without fear of having their ideas stolen or their contributions minimized. "For the first time in years, I feel like my voice actually matters," Jennifer confided to Sarah after the meeting, tears of gratitude glistening in her eyes as she described how Davidson had repeatedly silenced her suggestions. Client response exceeded every projection Marcus and Sarah had dared to make. The Henderson Group not only maintained their existing contract, but expanded their engagement, impressed by the level of attention and innovation they were receiving from a team that was genuinely excited about their work. Word spread quickly through industry networks about the exceptional service and creative solutions coming from Evolution Strategies, leading to referrals and new business opportunities that established the firm as a serious competitor in the strategic consulting space. Meanwhile, the situation at Pinnacle Solutions continued to deteriorate at an alarming rate. Davidson's attempts to manage client relationships personally proved disastrous, as his combination of arrogance and incompetence alienated long-standing accounts that had been carefully cultivated over years. The Meridian Corporation, one of Pinnacle's largest clients, terminated their contract after Davidson insulted their marketing director during a strategy presentation, claiming her suggestions were obviously coming from someone who doesn't understand the sophistication required for enterprise-level marketing solutions. The staffing crisis at Pinnacle became increasingly desperate as Davidson discovered that replacing experienced professionals wasn't as simple as hiring 2 fresh graduates as he'd suggested to Sarah. The new hires lacked the institutional knowledge, client relationships, and strategic understanding necessary to maintain service levels, leading to missed deadlines, communication breakdowns, and quality issues that further damaged the company's reputation. Davidson found himself working 16-hour days, trying to personally manage accounts he'd never bothered to understand when competent staff had been handling the details. The financial implications became apparent when Pinnacle's quarterly reports showed a 37% decline in revenue, directly attributable to lost accounts and reduced client engagement. The company's board of directors, who had previously given Davidson free rein based on the assumption that he was managing a profitable operation, began asking pointed questions about his leadership decisions and strategic vision. The narrative that talented employees were easily replaceable became increasingly difficult to maintain when the replacements consistently failed to deliver the results that clients expected and deserved. Sarah watched these developments with a mixture of satisfaction and genuine sadness. While there was undeniable vindication in seeing Davidson face the consequences of his toxic management style, she also felt sorry for the remaining Pinnacle employees who were struggling to maintain operations with inadequate support and leadership. Many of these were good people who hadn't had the opportunity or resources to make the same transition that Sarah and her colleagues had managed, and they were bearing the brunt of Davidson's failures while he continued to blame everyone except himself for the company's problems. The contrast became even more stark when Evolution Strategies was featured in Marketing Week magazine as one of the year's most promising new firms. The article highlighted their innovative approach to client collaboration, their commitment to employee development, and their impressive track record of delivering measurable results for their growing client base. Sarah was quoted extensively about the importance of creating workplace cultures that empower talent rather than suppress it, while Marcus discussed their philosophy of treating employees as partners in success rather than replaceable resources. The magazine feature generated significant industry attention and led to speaking engagements for both Sarah and Marcus at professional conferences and business schools. Their story became a case study in ethical leadership and sustainable business growth, demonstrating that companies built on mutual respect and collaborative excellence consistently outperform organizations that rely on fear-based management and artificial scarcity mindsets. The success of evolution strategies proved that talent isn't replaceable. It's the foundation upon which all sustainable business success is built. By the end of their first quarter, Evolution Strategies had not only matched their ambitious revenue projections, but exceeded them by 43%. They had grown from 6 founding members to 12 full-time employees, with plans for continued expansion based on incoming client demands and business opportunities. The company culture they had built emphasized continuous learning, creative problem-solving, and genuine care for both client success and employee well-being, creating a positive feedback loop that attracted both top talent and premium clients who valued authentic partnerships over transactional relationships. The crescendo of this remarkable transformation came 6 months after Sarah's resignation, when Evolution Strategies received the most significant business opportunity in their brief but impressive history. Global Dynamics, a Fortune 500 company looking to completely restructure their marketing and brand strategy, had been following the industry buzz about Evolution's innovative approach and exceptional results. Their CEO, Margaret Sullivan, personally called Sarah to request a comprehensive proposal for a 3-year strategic partnership worth $12 million, more than Pinnacle's entire annual revenue. When Sarah hung up the phone, her hands were trembling slightly with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. She immediately called Marcus into her office, and when she shared the news, he let out a low whistle and shook his head with amazement. 6 months ago, you were being told you were replaceable, he said with genuine emotion in his voice. Now one of the biggest companies in the country is personally requesting your expertise. This is poetic justice at its finest. The entire team gathered for an impromptu celebration that evening, but beneath the excitement, Sarah felt a profound sense of validation that years of Davidson's psychological manipulation had tried to steal from her. The presentation to Global Dynamics became a showcase of everything Evolution Strategies represented. Rather than the typical consultant-client hierarchy, Sarah and Marcus structured the meeting as a collaborative workshop where Global Dynamics' executive team could experience firsthand the innovative thinking and creative problem-solving that had become Evolution's trademark. Jennifer Torres presented data analytics that revealed market opportunities Global Dynamics hadn't even considered, while Tom Bradley unveiled branding concepts that completely reimagined their market positioning in ways that were both bold and strategically sound. Margaret Sullivan was visibly impressed not just by the quality of the work, but by the collaborative energy and genuine enthusiasm of the Evolution team. I've sat through hundreds of consultant presentations over the past 20 years, she told Sarah after the meeting. Usually, it feels like hired experts telling us what we should do. This felt like gaining brilliant partners who are genuinely excited about helping us succeed. That's the kind of relationship we want for something this important. The contract signing ceremony 3 weeks later was attended by the entire Evolution Strategies team, a celebration of collective achievement rather than individual glory. The success of the Global Dynamics partnership created a ripple effect throughout the industry that completely changed Evolution's trajectory. Other major corporations began reaching out, attracted by testimonials from satisfied clients and the growing reputation for innovative solutions and exceptional service. Within 8 months of leaving Pinnacle, Sarah found herself leading a team of 18 professionals working with some of the most prestigious brands in North America. The company had moved to larger offices in a prime downtown location, complete with state-of-the-art conference facilities and creative spaces that clients loved visiting. The personal transformation was equally remarkable. Sarah discovered leadership capabilities she'd never been able to develop in Pinnacle's restrictive environment. Instead of simply managing accounts, she was now mentoring young professionals, developing strategic visions for major corporations, and speaking at industry conferences about innovative approaches to client relationships and team development. The confidence and creativity that had been systematically suppressed by Davidson's toxic management. Style flourished in an environment that encouraged risk-taking and rewarded innovative thinking. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of Evolution's success was the impact on the team members who had made the leap from Pinnacle. Jennifer Torres had been promoted to senior strategic analyst and was pursuing an MBA with company support, her analytical insights now recognized and valued at the executive level. Tom Bradley had won 2 industry awards for creative excellence and was leading a team of junior designers who looked up to him as both mentor and creative inspiration. David Kim had transformed the operational efficiency of not just Evolution strategies, but had become a consultant to other growing firms looking to build sustainable systems and processes. During this period of explosive growth, news about Pinnacle Solutions painted an increasingly grim picture. The company had lost over 60% of their client base, and Davidson was facing increasing pressure from the board of directors and investors who were demanding explanations for the dramatic decline in performance and profitability. Multiple former clients had publicly criticized Pinnacle's service quality, with several specifically mentioning that they had followed key personnel to Evolution strategies and were much happier with their new partnership. The final blow came when Pinnacle lost their largest remaining client, Brookstone Industries, after Davidson made what the client described as inappropriate and unprofessional remarks during a crisis management meeting. The client's chief marketing officer later told industry publications that Davidson had blamed his own team for communication failures while refusing to take responsibility for strategic decisions that had contributed to the crisis. It was clear that this was not a company that could provide the level of professional service and accountability we require, the CMO stated publicly. My dear friends, I hope this story is reminding you that your value doesn't depend on someone else's ability to recognize it. In the comments, I see so many of you sharing your own experiences with difficult workplace situations, and I want you to know that your stories matter and inspire others who might be facing similar challenges. If Sarah's journey is touching your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and share this story with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes we all need reminding that we have more power and potential than we realize, especially when we're surrounded by people who don't appreciate our gifts. Tell us in the comments, what would you do if your boss told you that you were replaceable? Your experiences and wisdom help create a supportive community for everyone who visits our channel. The ultimate vindication came almost exactly 1 year after Sarah's dramatic resignation, when she received a phone call that she never could have anticipated. Davidson himself was on the line, his voice carrying none of the arrogant confidence that had characterized their last conversation. The man who had dismissed her as replaceable was now calling to ask if she might consider returning to help salvage what remained of Pinnacle Solutions. The irony was so profound that Sarah initially thought someone was playing an elaborate practical joke. "Sarah, I know we didn't part on the best terms," Davidson began, his words carefully measured in a way that suggested he'd rehearsed this conversation multiple times. "But I think we both know that you were one of our most valuable contributors, and I'm hoping we might be able to work something out." The desperation in his voice was unmistakable, a stark contrast to the casual cruelty with which he delivered her professional death sentence just 12 months earlier. He went on to explain that Pinnacle was facing potential bankruptcy, and that several board members had specifically suggested reaching out to former employees who might be able to help turn things around. The conversation revealed just how completely Davidson's world had collapsed. He admitted that he had fundamentally misunderstood the contributions of the employees who had left, acknowledging that their departure had created operational chaos that he had been unable to resolve. The new hires had proven inadequate to maintain client relationships or deliver the quality of work that Pinnacle's reputation had been built upon. Most devastatingly, he confessed that he now realized his management style had been driving away talent rather than cultivating it. Sarah listened to this remarkable reversal with a mixture of professional curiosity and personal satisfaction. The man who had once told her that she was dispensable was now essentially begging her to return and save his company from the consequences of his own toxic leadership. However, rather than responding with vindictive satisfaction, Sarah found herself feeling genuine sadness for someone who had learned such painful lessons about the value of treating people with respect and dignity. "Davidson, I appreciate you reaching out," Sarah replied, her voice calm and professional despite the emotional complexity of the moment. "But I need you to understand something important. The problem with Pinnacle was never about individual performance or employee capabilities. The problem was a leadership philosophy that treated talented people as threats rather than assets. Until that fundamental approach changes, no amount of individual talent can fix what's broken there." She went on to explain that evolution strategies had succeeded precisely because it was built on principles of mutual respect, collaborative decision-making, and genuine investment in employee growth and development. The conversation continued for almost an hour, with Davidson asking detailed questions about Evolution's business model and management philosophy. Sarah found herself inadvertently providing a masterclass in ethical leadership and sustainable business practices to the same person who had once dismissed her insights as overreach beyond her assigned responsibilities. The transformation in his attitude was remarkable. He was now genuinely interested in learning from someone whose expertise he had previously diminished and whose contributions he had systematically undervalued. When Davidson finally asked directly whether there was any possibility of Sarah returning to help restructure Pinnacle, she delivered an answer that was both definitive and compassionate. "Davidson, I found my professional home with Evolution Strategies. We've built something special here, and I'm not interested in leaving that to try to fix problems that could have been avoided with better leadership from the beginning. But I want you to know that I genuinely hope you can learn from this experience and build something better, whether that's at Pinnacle or somewhere else." The call ended with Davidson thanking Sarah for her honesty and asking whether she might be willing to serve as a consultant to help Pinnacle develop better management practices and rebuild their company culture. Sarah agreed to consider the possibility, recognizing that helping Pinnacle transform could benefit the employees who had remained there and were suffering under the current dysfunction. However, she made it clear that any consulting relationship would require fundamental changes in leadership approach and a genuine commitment to treating employees as valuable contributors rather than replaceable resources. 2 weeks later, Sarah received news that Davidson had resigned from Pinnacle Solutions, citing personal reasons, but privately acknowledging to industry contacts that he had come to realize he wasn't equipped to lead the kind of organization that could compete in the current market environment. The board of directors had accepted his resignation and was conducting a search for new leadership, with specific requirements for experience in collaborative management and team development. Essentially, everything that Davidson had failed to provide. The final chapter of Pinnacle's story under Davidson's leadership had become a cautionary tale throughout the industry about the costs of toxic management and the importance of recognizing and nurturing talent. Business schools began using the Evolution Strategies success story alongside the Pinnacle decline as a case study in leadership, effectiveness, and organizational culture. Sarah and Marcus were frequently invited to speak about their experience, sharing insights about building companies that attract and retain top talent through respect, opportunity, and genuine investment in employee success. Meanwhile, Evolution Strategies continued to thrive, growing to 35 employees and securing contracts with major corporations across North America. The company had established scholarship programs for aspiring marketing professionals and had become known throughout the industry as an exceptional place to work, regularly receiving awards for workplace culture and employee satisfaction. Sarah had not only escaped from a toxic work environment, but had helped create the kind of organization she had always dreamed of being part of. The most profound transformation, however, was personal rather than professional. Sarah discovered that leaving Pinnacle had freed her not just from Davidson's toxic management, but from a limiting belief system that had kept her accepting less than she deserved for far too long. "I realized I had been complicit in my own diminishment," she later told Marcus during one of their evening strategy sessions, her voice carrying a mixture of regret and determination. "Every time I stayed silent when he took credit for my work, every time I smiled politely when he dismissed my ideas, I was teaching him that I would accept being treated as less than I was worth." The experience taught her that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly what you don't want to accept in your life, even if their intention is to diminish rather than enlighten you. Davidson's cruelty had inadvertently become the catalyst for Sarah to recognize her own worth and potential in ways that years of positive reinforcement might never have achieved. She found herself sleeping better at night, no longer plagued by the anxiety that had become her constant companion during those final months at Pinnacle. The ripple effects extended far beyond Sarah's immediate circle. The other Evolution Strategies team members had similar revelations about their own capabilities and professional worth. Jennifer Torres completed her MBA and became a sought-after speaker on data analytics and strategic planning, her confidence transformed by working in an environment that celebrated rather than threatened by her intelligence. "At Pinnacle, I felt like I had to hide how much I knew," Jennifer confided during the company's first anniversary celebration, raising her glass with trembling hands. "Here, the smarter I get, the more valuable I become to everyone." Tom Bradley opened his own creative studio as a side business, his artistic vision flourishing in ways that had been impossible under Pinnacle's restrictive and credit-stealing culture. Perhaps most remarkably, the Evolution Strategies model began inspiring other entrepreneurs and business leaders who were tired of conventional hierarchical management structures. The company became a case study not just in business success, but in demonstrating that ethical leadership and collaborative cultures could be more profitable and sustainable than fear-based management systems. Sarah and Marcus were invited to consult with organizations across various industries who wanted to transform their cultures and improve both employee satisfaction and business results. The personal cost of Davidson's approach became clear when industry publications reported that he had struggled to find new employment despite his years of experience and prestigious educational background. Word had spread throughout professional networks about his management style and the dramatic failure of Pinnacle under his leadership. The man who had once wielded his authority like a weapon discovered that reputation and relationships matter far more than positional power when it comes to long-term career success. 3 years after that fateful conversation in Davidson's office, Sarah stood before an audience of 500 marketing executives at the National Business Leadership Conference, delivering a keynote address about building organizations that attract and retain exceptional talent. The speech received a standing ovation, but the moment that touched her most deeply came afterward, when a young professional approached her with tears in her eyes. "I'm dealing with a boss exactly like the one you described," the woman said. "Your story gave me the courage to start looking for something better. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to accept being treated like I'm disposable." That conversation reminded Sarah why sharing her story mattered so much. Every person who heard about her experience and found the courage to demand better treatment in their own professional life represented a victory against toxic workplace cultures and abusive management practices. The message was simple, but revolutionary. Talented people should never have to accept being diminished by insecure leaders, and sometimes the best response to being told you're replaceable is to prove just how irreplaceable you really are. Evolution Strategies had grown into a $40 million company with offices in 3 cities and a reputation as one of the most innovative and employee-focused organizations in the strategic consulting industry. But the numbers, impressive as they were, told only part of the story. The real success was measured in the transformed lives of employees who had discovered their potential, the satisfied clients who had received exceptional service, and the positive culture that attracted top talent from across the industry. The final irony came when Sarah learned that Pinnacle Solutions had eventually been acquired by a larger firm, with the new owners specifically citing the need to completely restructure the company culture and management practices. The acquisition documents explicitly mentioned the talent exodus of 2023 as a key factor that had damaged Pinnacle's market position and competitive capabilities. Davidson's philosophy of treating employees as replaceable had ultimately made the entire company replaceable in the marketplace. As Sarah reflected on the journey from that devastating conversation in Davidson's office to the thriving organization she now led, she realized that some of life's greatest gifts come disguised as its worst moments. Being told she was replaceable had forced her to discover that she was actually irreplaceable. Not because she couldn't be replaced in any specific role, but because her unique combination of skills, experience, and values could create something entirely new and better. The woman who had walked out of Pinnacle Solutions feeling dismissed and undervalued had become a leader who helped others recognize their own irreplaceable worth, creating a legacy that extended far beyond business success to genuine human empowerment and professional transformation. Today, when young professionals ask Sarah for career advice, she always tells them the same thing. Never let anyone convince you that you're disposable, because the moment you start believing that, you stop fighting.